Have you ever lain awake at night, eyes fixed on the ceiling, with your thoughts spinning like a machine you can't turn off? We analyze, we worry, we overthink, until we become prisoners of our own mind. But what if the problem isn't that we think too much, but that we've forgotten how to take command of our thinking? In this age of constant information overload, the mind has become a battlefield. And overthinking, the relentless flood of thought, is our most cunning enemy. It steals our focus, our sleep, and our peace. Yet Stoic philosophy, an ancient school of wisdom, offers us 10 timeless principles, tested by centuries, that can quiet the noise, redirect our attention inward, and help us reclaim control over how we respond to the chaos of emotion. This video isn't just about how to stop overthinking. It's a journey to rebuild the mind with reason, discipline, and the calm resolve of someone who chooses to live deliberately. If you're exhausted from being drained by your own mind, this might just be the doorway to a different way of living, steadier, sharper, and more serene. 1. Name the invisible beast. Most of us don't realize that overthinking doesn't begin with a clear problem. It begins with a vague feeling, a flicker of anxiety, a twinge of uncertainty, an offhand comment someone made. From there, the mind starts spinning stories, analyzing endlessly, imagining every possible scenario, and within minutes, we lose the ability to distinguish between reality and the narratives we've built inside our heads. That's when the invisible beast, overthinking, sneaks in, clings tight, and takes over our inner world. What's most dangerous isn't overthinking itself, but the fact that we don't even know it's happening. We lack the awareness to spot it in the moment. It's like being pulled into a whirlpool without realizing you are drowning. That's why the first step to mastering the mind is to name what's happening. Call it out, pull it out of the fog, and speak its name. I am overthinking, not I'm anxious, not I'm tired, but I'm trapped in a loop of unnecessary thoughts. Simply recognizing this is already an act of reason. And in Stoic philosophy, reason is our greatest weapon against emotional chaos. Why is naming so crucial? Because anything unnoticed grows larger and more frightening in the mind. It becomes a faceless shadow lurking just over your shoulder, making you uneasy without giving you something to foresee. But once named, that shadow loses its power. It becomes something you can observe, examine, and eventually control. This is the foundation of all psychological healing, from meditation to therapy. And the Stoics practiced it millennia ago by teaching us to become observers of our own minds. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in the Meditations, "Watch your thoughts as a gatekeeper watches each visitor at the city gate." The image is simple but profound. When we become gatekeepers of the mind, we are no longer swept away by every emotional surge. We can say, this is fear of the future, or this is uncertainty seeking resolution. Each layer of thought is unwrapped and brought into the light of reason, and from there, we can choose what to keep and what to let go. Importantly, naming is not judging. We don't blame ourselves for overthinking. We simply note it, objectively, like a watchman recording who comes and goes. This creates a space, sometimes only a sliver. But in that space, willpower is born. In that moment, we are no longer passive victims, but conscious agents with the power to decide. This is a core teaching of Stoicism. Inner freedom begins with the ability to respond with awareness, not with emotional reflex. Naming also opens the door to every other technique for breaking the cycle of overthinking. Once you've identified, I'm stuck in vague thoughts about the future, you can apply Stoic questions like, is this within my control? Or, what can I do right now? But if you haven't named the fear, those questions have no ground to stand on. That's why every other tool starts here, with the honest, clear recognition of what's happening in the mind. In a world where we're constantly distracted, bombarded by information and pressure, the ability to observe your thoughts and name what's happening within you is a survival skill. It is the first step toward building a resilient, quiet inner life, one that doesn't get swept away by every storm of emotion. This isn't just a practice for philosophers. It's a vital tool for anyone who wants to live with purpose, freedom, and depth. 2. Small actions, a forceful counterattack. One of the most dangerous traits of overthinking is that it paralyzes us in our own lives. The more we think, the more we spiral inward, and the less we act. And the less we act, the more room we give our thoughts to multiply, expand, and take over the mind. It's a closed loop, and if we don't break free in time, it can lead to mental exhaustion, disconnection from reality, and the loss of even the simplest decision-making. Stoicism confronts this head-on with a clear remedy: counter thought with action. Immediate, decisive, concrete, and simple. In Stoic philosophy, action doesn't need to be grand or complex. A small, deliberate act can become a sharp weapon to shatter the loop of overthinking, because excessive thinking can only exist in the abstract, where nothing has happened yet, where one question leads to another without end. But action, even the smallest kind, rooted in the present, it pulls us out of the fog of the mind and plants us firmly on the ground, where hands can touch, feet can feel the floor, and eyes can see what's real, not imagined. Epictetus once emphasized, no one grows simply by reading or pondering. Action is the true measure of progress. This is a profound message for anyone trying to escape overthinking. When stuck in indecision, instead of analyzing further, we can choose to do something. Anything. It might be tidying up your desk, writing a few lines in a journal, walking around the room, or drinking a glass of water. These acts may seem trivial, but when your mind is frozen, they are the first steps toward reclaiming control. The power of small action lies in this. It restores a sense of agency. When you act, you're sending a clear message to the mind: I am not powerless. That's the first spark that reignites self-trust. And once that trust returns, you'll have the strength to take bigger, more purposeful steps. That's why Stoic practitioners favor action over analysis. They don't deny emotion, but they refuse to be ruled by it. They use action as a way to reshape emotion through lived experience. A key principle here is, don't wait to feel ready before acting. In truth, readiness rarely comes before movement. It follows it. This is why even a small act, done immediately, holds immense power. In Stoic thinking, delay is an accomplice to hesitation, and hesitation opens the door to anxiety and fear. The closer an action is to the moment of realization, the more effective it is at breaking the cycle of negative thought. Small actions also help reestablish the boundary between you and your thoughts. When caught in overthinking, it feels like being submerged in a wave. But if you do something concrete, like placing your hand on a table and feeling the texture, or taking a slow, deep breath, you create an anchor point. And from that anchor, you can begin to pull yourself back to shore. Stoic practitioners understand the feeling of control starts with simple, intentional acts. Nothing dramatic is required. Just one small step is enough to open space for reason to return. And in the end, action is how philosophy becomes real. A person may read endlessly about Stoicism, memorize the teachings of Marcus or Seneca, but if they don't act when the mind is in turmoil, all that knowledge becomes empty. Because Stoicism is not a philosophy for quiet libraries, it's a framework for real life, built for people who must make decisions, endure emotions, and keep moving forward. So if you want to strike back at overthinking, don't look for deep wisdom. Start with something small, but real, and do it now. 3. Letting go is not surrender. It's choosing the right battle. One of the deepest roots of overthinking is the illusion that we must control everything, every possible outcome, every emotion, every response from others, and the way the world reacts. When things don't go as planned, we feel not just disappointed, but responsible, as if we've done something wrong. And so the mind begins to obsess, replaying the past, predicting the future, grasping for control over what is already beyond reach. Stoicism doesn't deny these emotions, but it offers a clear, powerful principle. Discern what is within your control and what is not. Everything else, let it go. Letting go is not giving up. It doesn't mean you don't care, lack responsibility, or passively accept whatever comes. On the contrary, in Stoic thought, letting go is a rational act, a conscious choice that says, I will not waste energy on what I cannot control. It's a way to protect inner peace and focus your strength on what truly matters, like a warrior who chooses only battles that can be fought with honor, rather than swinging wildly at the wind. What sets the Stoic mindset apart is how it redefines control. While most people think control means bending the world to their will, Stoicism teaches that true control lies within your thoughts, actions, emotions, and responses. Everything else, weather, politics, other people's behavior, public opinion, is external. And because they are external, they cannot be the source of inner peace. This shift in perspective is what breaks the cycle of overthinking. Realizing that worry changes nothing. It only drains you. One of the reasons we struggle to let go is because we tie our identity too closely to our expectations. We don't just hope for something. We define ourselves by it. And when that expectation is threatened, so is our sense of self. The mind responds by trying to control every aspect of the situation. But Stoicism invites us to separate identity from outcome, so we can view events with clarity. When you see things as part of life, not as a reflection of who you are, you can adapt instead of resist. This isn't defeat, it's a higher form of wisdom and self-mastery. Letting go also brings us back to the present. Most of what we overthink is tied to the future, things that could happen but haven't. The farther we drift from the present, the easier it is to get lost in mental chaos. The Stoic lives as if the present is all that exists, because in truth, it's all we have. The past is fixed, the future uncertain, and the only space we can act is now. When you release what's beyond your grasp, you stop chasing the past or fearing the future. You return to the only place where action is possible, the present moment. A practicing Stoic understands that letting go is a choice made daily, hourly, even moment to moment. Each time the mind stirs with concern over something outside your control, you pause, breathe, and ask, is this within my control? That question is a compass, recalibrating your mind and guiding your behavior. It's not a one-time insight. It's a habit, but that very habit is the road to a freedom rooted in the self, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. And in today's world, where everything shifts constantly, where people are overwhelmed by expectations, comparison, and uncertainty, knowing when to let go isn't just a philosophy, it's a survival skill, one that lets us live lighter, deeper, and free from the mental maze of overthinking. Because in the end, life doesn't require us to control everything. It only asks that we do our part with clarity and sincerity. 4. Set a worry window. Contain its power. In the modern world, worry is no longer a passing emotion. It has become a default state. We wake up with a vague unease, carry a mind full of concerns into our workday, and fall asleep replaying endless what-if scenarios. The danger doesn't lie in the content of our worries, but in their endlessness. They seep into every corner of life, keeping the mind in constant alert. And when worry goes unchecked, it becomes an inner invasion, draining energy, eroding focus, and robbing us of the joy of living. Stoicism sees this clearly and offers a simple but powerful strategy. Give worry boundaries, both in time and space, instead of letting it dominate your life. Creating a worry window is a deliberate way to neutralize emotion through reason. It's not about suppressing feelings, but about placing them within a defined frame. A boundary set with clarity. When you reserve a specific time each day, say 15 to 20 minutes, to face and process what worries you, you send a strong message to the mind. I will listen to this concern, but on my terms, not on its own. This, in the true Stoic spirit, is a shift in power from being a victim to becoming the one in command. The essence of this practice lies in turning worry from an invisible force into a manageable element. When your mind knows there is a set time to address the worry, it no longer needs to haunt you all day. Just like a child who knows they'll get their snack at a certain hour won't keep pestering through the lesson. The mind settles down when it trusts a structure. With a schedule for worry, the urgency fades. It becomes less persistent and less invasive to the rest of your life. During that time, do one simple thing. Write down everything that's bothering you, without organizing, without solving. Just unload it from your head onto the page. This creates distance between you and the storm of thought. Then, if there is something that requires action, you can choose to take a step. For the rest, simply acknowledge them as part of being human. And when time's up, stop. Put down the pen, close the notebook, and return to the rest of your day. This takes discipline. But discipline is how you reclaim authority over your mind. A core Stoic teaching is this: let reason guide action, not emotion. When you create a worry window, you're using reason as the coordinator, not letting feelings dictate your course. This helps preserve calm, sharpens clarity, and trains consistency, a key virtue in any path of inner strength. Setting limits around worry also teaches you to distinguish between temporary emotion and genuine problems. When worry runs unfiltered, everything feels urgent. But when you sit with your thoughts during a set time and examine them one by one, you'll see that most are repetitive, exaggerated, or imaginary. This recognition lightens your load and builds a clearer view of life. What matters here is this: the worry window isn't where worry is fed. It's where it's examined, exposed, and stripped of its hold. Think of it as a small box in the center of a room. You know it's there. You permit its presence, but you don't let it take over the space. And in a turbulent world, anyone who seeks self-mastery must learn to contain the chaos that arises from within. So instead of forcing yourself to stop worrying, try something smarter. Schedule your worry. When you know when and where you'll meet your emotions, they no longer intimidate you. You're no longer reacting. You're choosing. You become the architect of your peace, not by escaping your thoughts, but by mastering them. 5. Redirect the energy from thought to presence. Overthinking isn't just a mental phenomenon. It's the way vital energy gets trapped in the mind instead of flowing into the real world. When we overthink, especially in uncertain situations, the mind loops through assumptions, scenarios, and questions with no end. Each thought drains a portion of mental energy, and when that energy isn't transformed, it builds into tension, fatigue, and at times, paralysis. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell us to suppress thought. It urges us to convert that energy from speculation into presence, bringing it back into action and lived experience. The Stoic doesn't treat thought as the enemy, but they understand that without boundaries, it becomes destructive. So instead of investing energy into analyzing what hasn't happened, they direct it into small, grounded actions in the present moment, because the present is the only realm where we have real influence. No one can change the past. No one owns the future. But this moment, where you breathe, sense, and move, is the only place from which change can begin. Shifting energy from mind to movement requires awareness. It starts with recognizing when you've been caught in the loop. Then comes a conscious decision. I will stop here and return my attention to the real world. That might begin with something as simple as rinsing your hands under cold water and noticing the sensation, or stepping outside to take a full breath and listen. These small acts hold profound power in Stoic practice because they shift energy from thought into presence. When you do anything with full presence, folding a blanket, washing a dish, taking a walk, you reestablish the link between mind and body. You remind yourself, I'm still here, and I choose action over rumination. This shift doesn't just reduce anxiety, it restores a sense of control, which is essential to a healthy mental state. The Stoic doesn't wait for motivation to act. They act first, and let the act awaken the will. It's a reversal of modern logic, but one that works when facing stress and uncertainty. Another core principle: mental energy doesn't disappear, it redirects. If you don't act, that energy finds another outlet through worry, frustration, or restlessness. But if you steer it into purposeful action, reading a page, writing a journal entry, tidying a spot, it's spent in a healthy way and leaves something meaningful behind. That's the difference between someone ruled by emotion and someone who rules from within. One reacts impulsively, the other chooses rationally. And in Stoicism, reason is the compass that steadies us through emotional storms. As you learn to redirect energy from thinking to presence, you don't just quiet the mind. You begin building a new habit, the habit of intentional living, because every small act is a declaration. I am alive, I am here, and I am choosing. In a world overloaded with noise and distraction, the ability to return to the present is power, a kind of spiritual armor no one can take from you. And that's one of the core virtues of the Stoic: to live simply, be deeply present, and let reason guide your vital force. So next time you find yourself caught in an endless chain of thoughts, remember, you don't have to think your way out. Sometimes, doing one small thing with full attention is how you reclaim command. And in the Stoic world, that is never a small thing. 6. Teach the mind gratitude, not lack. One of the deepest roots of overthinking is an untreatment of lack. It's not just a lack of material things, but a lack of emotional fulfillment, recognition, or meaning. The mind, when unguided, defaults to focusing on what's missing, what hasn't been achieved, what could be better, or what others have that we don't. Gradually, we fall into constant comparison and a quiet, lingering dissatisfaction. And that opens the door for endless thinking, because the mind needs to explain why we're not enough, not there yet, not worthy. In Stoic philosophy, the antidote isn't to run from this feeling, but to redirect it from lack to gratitude. Gratitude is not a feeling that naturally arises when things are easy. It's a skill, a mental discipline that the Stoic actively cultivates each day, because they know the mind cannot exist in two states at once: gratitude and deficiency. When you're truly grateful for what you have, you can't simultaneously feel lacking. Conversely, if you're caught up in what's missing, you lose sight of what already is. This is a conscious choice to see the full part of the glass, rather than obsess over what's not there. A core Stoic practice is to ask, If I lost this tomorrow, how would I feel? The question isn't meant to provoke fear, but to awaken appreciation. We often take basic things for granted: health, loved ones, clean air, the ability to walk, or even a quiet morning. But the Stoic sees each as a gift from fate, and therefore they are thankful. That perspective protects them from falling into dissatisfaction or endless craving. When the mind is trained in gratitude, it slowly lets go of the habit of comparison, judgment, and demand. Gratitude is also a practical tool in stopping overthinking. Most runaway thoughts stem from the feeling of not being enough, not successful enough, smart enough, loved enough. But when you begin to acknowledge what you do have, you interrupt that mental spiral. You create new space where instead of asking, "Why don't I have this yet?" you begin to ask, "What do I already have that supports me right now?" That shift returns you to the present, brings you back to what's within your control, and allows you to act from a steadier place. The Stoic doesn't wait for perfection to be grateful. They practice gratitude even in imperfection, because they understand gratitude doesn't change the situation. It changes how you show up in it. A person stuck in the rain can complain, or they can be thankful for a place to take shelter. A person who fails can wallow, or be grateful for the lesson gained. The difference is never in the circumstances, but in the chosen response. Practicing gratitude doesn't need to be complicated. A sheet of paper, morning or night, where you write down 3 things you're grateful for. Nothing grand. Maybe a good meal, a deep sleep, a genuine conversation. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And once the gratitude muscle is strong enough, it can push back against negative thoughts the moment they arise. More importantly, gratitude creates a positive feedback loop. When you're grateful, you notice more of the good. When you notice it, you're more likely to act on opportunity. When you act from a positive state, the results improve. And when outcomes improve, you have even more to be grateful for. That loop not only quiets the mind, it enriches life from the inside out. The Stoic understands this and chooses to build their life on that firm foundation, instead of chasing the never-ending hunger of desire and scarcity. So if you want to escape overthinking, don't just try to think positively. Take action by writing down what you're grateful for every day. Train your mind to focus on what's already whole. And from that sense of wholeness, you'll begin to see what truly matters. You'll stop chasing what isn't here yet and start living deeply with what is, in a way that is full and awake. 7. Don't obsess over outcomes. Be honest with your effort. In today's world, we're often taught that results are everything. Success is measured by achievements, recognition, numbers, and tangible rewards. This mindset traps many people in a constant state of anxiety, caught in a spiral of expectations, their own, others, and society's. When those expectations aren't met, they begin to doubt themselves, criticize themselves, and ultimately fall into overthinking. Not because they didn't try, but because they believe that a less than perfect result means total failure. But Stoic philosophy offers a different view. Results are not the measure of a person's worth. Honest effort is what deserves respect. Epictetus once said, "You don't control what happens, but you can control how you respond and how you act." That idea lies at the heart of the Stoic worldview. They don't act to achieve outcomes at all costs. They act because it's the right thing to do, because it's their role to fulfill, and they commit to it with integrity, and sincerity. Then they let go. They leave the rest to nature, to fate, or to whatever lies beyond human control. This isn't resignation. It's humility in the face of our limits, and courage in doing all we can within them. When we fixate solely on outcomes, the mind enters a state of constant evaluate and anxiety. It compares, measures, fears failure, and spins countless what-ifs. All of this fuels overthinking because we stop living in the present, stop acting from the heart, and start chasing an imaginary finish line. The Stoic understands you can do everything right and still not get the result you wanted. That's not failure. That's reality, and you don't deserve punishment for that. But if you lie, cut corners, or act carelessly just to chase success, even if you win, you can't live in peace with yourself. This leads to a deeper truth. Inner peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from being honest with yourself. When you know you've given your best, when you've acted with clarity and integrity, you can stand tall, win or lose. That is the inner freedom the Stoics talk about. A freedom that doesn't depend on praise, outcomes, or public approval. And in a world obsessed with chasing more, to pause and focus on doing the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons, is a radical act. Training this mindset isn't easy. We've been conditioned to equate our worth with what we produce. But change begins with small acts. Completing a task no one sees, doing something kind without needing credit, pouring your attention into a task without thinking about the reward. Each of these helps rebuild a more stable internal value system. And when that system is strong, the mind no longer fears what lies beyond its reach, because you no longer need results to prove your worth. Living by principle becomes its own reward. Overthinking often arises when we tie our entire self-worth to results. But when you shift the focus from outcome to effort, you not only reduce anxiety, you reclaim a sense of control. You may not know what will happen, but you know how you will act, and that is enough. In a world full of uncertainty, the only thing you can do is act with integrity, not to achieve something, but because that's the way of a rational, ethical, and dignified human being. So don't let your mind be pulled by the weight of results. Return to what you're doing. Right here, right now. Do it with force, with care, and with your full presence. Then let go, because right action is your part, and outcome is always the universe's. 8. Train through voluntary discomfort. In modern life, we are increasingly wrapped in comfort. With the push of a button, we get food. Within seconds, we're entertained. Everything is designed to be faster, easier, and more pleasant. Yet this comfort weakens our will, gradually eroding our capacity to endure, often without us realizing it. At some point, even the smallest inconvenience can send the mind into panic, and that creates vulnerability to change, anxiety over risk, and a spiral of negative thinking. In Stoic philosophy, there's a practice considered essential to guard against this: deliberately facing discomfort to train the mind to meet reality with resilience. Voluntary discomfort isn't self-punishment, nor is it about proving strength. It's a way to create friction against laziness and emotional reactivity. The Stoic understands that mental fortitude isn't built in comfort zones. They don't wait for adversity to arrive. They create small challenges to test their limits, to get familiar with discomfort, and to make it part of their mental landscape. Cold showers, walking long distances instead of driving, eating plainly, sleeping on a hard floor, wearing simple clothes instead of luxurious ones. These are all examples of voluntary discomfort, exercises that reforge the mind's resilience. At the core of this practice lies one truth: when you choose discomfort, you reclaim authority over your feelings. You're no longer shocked by challenges because you've practiced the mindset to face them. You're less rattled by failure because you've experienced lack and learned to stand within it. And when you loosen your dependence on ideal conditions, You expand your internal flexibility. You become unshakable in any place, under any pressure. This is the Stoic aim, not to control the world, but to train so the world cannot control you. One important reminder: voluntary discomfort doesn't have to be extreme or dramatic. It only requires a conscious choice. I'm doing this not because I have to, but because I want to grow stronger from within. That mindset separates the one who endures by force from the one who builds inner strength. When you skip a meal, you're not just testing hunger. You're mastering desire. When you sleep without a pillow, you're not just adjusting posture. You're learning to live without perfection. And each time you do it, you send a powerful signal to the mind. I do not depend on comfort to exist. I am self-governing. Whatever the conditions, voluntary discomfort also helps diminish. Fear often grows in the absence of experience, but once you begin facing discomfort in small doses, you realize it's not as terrifying as imagined. In truth, most fear lives in the mind, not in reality. The Stoic uses direct action to peel away that illusion. By leaning into the things that make them uncomfortable, they learn to stare down for, to live beside it, and gradually to strip it of its power. When you train for hardship deliberately, you build a foundation that no one can take from you. In a world ruled by the constant pursuit of ease, the person who can calmly walk into difficulty holds the greatest advantage, not because they're stronger, but because they were less dependent. They don't collapse at loss, don't unravel when plans fall apart, and most of all, they don't let their mind be overwhelmed by chaos. So if you want to grow strong from the inside out, don't wait for life to force you to change. Create your own challenges each day, step by step, to teach your mind that you can adjust and you evolve. Because in Stoic thought, there is nothing more valuable than a mind tempered by hardship that still remains calm, rational, and in control. That is true strength. 9. Reflect on the shortness of life. There is a truth we all know, but often choose to ignore. Life is finite. We will all die. Yet we live as if we never will. We postpone what truly matters, save our emotions for a more appropriate time, and spend most of our energy worrying about trivial things, gossip, past mistakes, vague anxieties about the future. In Stoic philosophy, reflecting on the shortness of life is not an act of pessimism. It's a wake-up call. Because only by acknowledging time's limits can we begin to live with depth and intention. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You will die, not long from now, so act like a rational being." This isn't a threat. It's guidance to reorient your life. When you see each day as a gift, you become unwilling to waste it on things unworthy of your time. You begin to question each action. Does this really matter? If this were the last time I ever did this, how would I do it differently? These questions pull you back into the present and help you clearly see what is essential and what is noise. The reality of life's brevity is one of the most powerful tools for overcoming overthinking, because so many of the worries we carry hold no long-term value. We obsess over minor details, petty arguments, temporary judgments, but when placed against the backdrop of a finite life, they lose their weight. The Stoic regularly practices memento mori, a reminder of death, not to live in fear, but to live with clarity. That clarity becomes the foundation for wise decisions, calm response, and the strength to rise above emotional chaos. When we overthink, we often get stuck in what if things go wrong? What if I fail? What if others misunderstand me? But when you remember that your time is limited, a new question emerges is, will this matter a year from now? 5 years from now? On my deathbed? If the answer is no, why give it power over your present peace? Reflecting on death doesn't paralyze action. It makes action more focused. more deliberate, more meaningful. It stops you from delaying yourself, your love, and your kindness. The Stoic does not deny the fear of death. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. They face it head-on to sharpen their awareness, and from that awareness, they learn to treat each day as a gift not guaranteed to repeat. That's why those who live by this philosophy enjoy life deeply, without chasing constant stimulation. They don't rush, and they don't retreat. They engage fully with each moment, because they understand it will not come again. To the Stoic, time isn't a luxury to burn. It's the most precious asset we own, and one that can never be recovered. So every time you catch yourself wasting it on things that add no value, that is your opportunity to adjust. And when you live with the mindset that your time is not endless, you begin to choose more wisely what to care about, who to listen to, what work to commit to, and what attitude to bring to hardship. In the broader picture of life, every win and loss, every praise and criticism is temporary. What endures is how you lived. Whether you lived with honesty, with love, with effort, and whether you left the world better than you found it. And that only happens when you live with full awareness that your time is finite. It's that very limitation that makes each moment sacred. And only when you treat each day as your last can you give today the reverence it deserves. 10. Turn to outer wisdom. When the inner light fades, there are moments when we feel like we're standing in a fog, unable to see the path ahead, unsure whether to move forward or retreat, uncertain whether to keep going or let go. At times like these, the more we think, the more tangled we become. The deeper we analyze, the more stuck we feel. Because the human mind, in a state of confusion, easily becomes its own trap. In such moments, the wisest move isn't to struggle alone in search of answers, but to pause and turn to outer wisdom. Like a lamp in the dark, when your inner light has gone dim. Stoic philosophy does not glorify isolation or extreme individualism. On the contrary, sages like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius emphasize that we are social beings, made to connect, to learn, and to grow together. Reaching out when you're lost is not weakness. It's an act of humility and intellectual maturity. No one is clear-headed all the time. No one is completely objective about themselves. And so, seeking perspective from a trusted friend, a profound book, or an honest piece of advice is how we escape the spiral of our own thoughts. When our inner world is clouded by emotion, we become trapped in defensiveness, personal bias, and limiting beliefs. That's why Stoics encourage regular dialogue with others, writing down thoughts to make them visible, and asking questions instead of just chasing answers. Wisdom doesn't come solely from within. It comes from actively receiving outside, then reflecting, filtering, and transforming it into genuine personal insight. This is not copying, not dependency. It is learning in order to stand firmly on your own. One of the most effective ways to access outer wisdom is to build sincere relationships with people who live with depth. You don't need many, just a few who can truly listen without judgment, respond with honesty, and help you see things from a new angle. In a world overflowing with information, but starving for wisdom, such relationships are more precious than gold. And when you find someone like that, listen with an open mind, not to be comforted, but to be reflected, challenged, and illuminated. Beyond people, one of wisdom's most loyal companions is books. Books written in blood, through years of trial and reflection. These are treasures for anyone seeking a deeper life. The ancient Stoics wrote not to teach others, but to remind themselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Meditations not for readers, but as a conversation with himself." So reading their work is not just studying philosophy. It's entering a dialogue with great minds, finding the right words when your own mind is in disarray. Seeking outer wisdom also means accepting that we are not all-knowing. And that humility is the key that unlocks growth. The strongest people aren't those who never need help. They're the ones who know when to pause and ask for guidance. That's why the Stoic cultivates the ability to listen, self-reflect, and ask timely questions, because they know that a single right insight, a timely piece of advice, a well-placed paragraph, can change the course of an entire chapter in life. And finally, when you step out of that clouded space, you'll realize outer wisdom is just the spark. The rest is up to you, the one who must keep that flame alive through action, discipline, and the daily choice to live with awareness. The Stoic does not seek knowledge to display, but to transform it into action, into character, and into true inner strength. So if your mind feels overwhelmed, pause. Don't try to solve everything alone. Seek a source of wisdom and let it light the road beneath your feet. When I first encountered Stoicism, I didn't treat it as a philosophical system to memorize, but as a way to live, to breathe, to exist consciously amid the chaos of everyday life. Each principle we've explored together isn't some distant idea. They are practical tools I reach for whenever the mind spirals, or I feel myself drifting from the present, tangled in thought. I've learned that self-mastery doesn't come from suppressing emotions or thoughts, but from the ability to return to myself and choose to respond with reason and awareness. In daily life, I train with simple acts. In the morning, I spend a few minutes writing down 3 things I'm grateful for. At midday, I take 10 minutes of quiet to observe my stream of thoughts. At night, I ask myself what I truly lived by today. I try not to get swept up in outcomes, but to focus on doing my part well. Whether it's a single conversation, a small task, or a silent decision. And when a hard day comes, I don't chase the negative feeling away. I sit with it, ask what it wants to teach me, and then let it pass like a cloud. Over time, these acts became habits, and from those habits, I began to feel a deeper calm, a kind of freedom that doesn't come from controlling the world, but from learning to govern myself. If this video brought you even a moment of calm, a fresh perspective, or simply a pause from the endless stream of thoughts, don't let it stop here. Take action, because real change always begins with a small choice. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next Stoic reflection, where we train our inner strength, willpower, and inner freedom together in an increasingly chaotic world. And if there's one principle from today's video that you feel ready to apply, share it in the comments. I read every one. If you want to continue exploring this way of life, check out more videos on the channel, where we'll go deeper into the small daily habits that lead to profound inner transformation. I'll see you in the next video.